Last time I was at my local dollar store, I picked up one of these little wooden frames. Then I have this little pearl-like ribbon that I also got at the dollar store. I'm going to go ahead, I'm actually going to cut the ribbon up into strands. I'm going to use some hot glue and I'm going to glue down the pearls onto the frame. Once I have all the pearls on the frames, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take some black spray paint. Once it's dry, I'm going to use some rub and buff to go over the black spray paint and really make this frame look antique. I found some elastic in my sewing stash and pulling it nice and tight, I used a crown stapler to attach it in 2 spots on the back of the frame. This is what it looks like complete here. I've actually designed this little frame to go around my Amazon Alexa Echo. So now I can set it here on my kitchen counter. It's totally disguised by this antique looking little frame, and it only cost me under $5 to make this.
To start this project, I want to get the frames ready. I'm going to remove all of the insides, including the glass. Next, I'm going to paint the frames. I like that the black will peek through, but I do want them to be mostly white. While the frames are drying, I want to paint some wood pieces that I picked up. These are a little thin, so I'm going to use some wood glue to adhere two together. To make the slats in my lantern, I'm going to use these little wood stir sticks. I'll paint these white with the same paint that I used on the frames. With the first coat of paint on all the pieces, it's time to start putting them together. I'm using hot glue to attach the 4 frames to one of the wood pieces, and then I'm going to glue them all together. Now that the frames are together, I want to start adding the stir sticks. I'm going to put the horizontal ones in first. I just need to snip it so that it's the correct length, and then I can put them in. To decorate the top of the lantern, I want to add a small rope handle. I have a little piece of copper pipe that's going to work perfectly with some thick rope to do that. All that's left to do now is add a little hot glue to the lid of the lantern and place the copper pipe into it. I love how easy this lantern was to make and how pretty it looks on my buffet. It's simple and charming all at the same time.
Ever look around your home and think, wow, those outlets really bring down the vibe? So I decided to change that, and the solution came from inexpensive thrift store frames. First, I cut a thin piece of scrap wood to fit perfectly into the back opening of the more ornate frame. This was going to act as a solid base. Since smooth surfaces don't always hold glue well, I roughed up the wood with very coarse sandpaper to give the adhesive something to grip onto. On the back of the wood piece, I carefully measured for center and level so the plug covers would end up exactly where the real outlet would be. Next, I grabbed a few plug safety covers. Same deal, sanded them down so the epoxy would stick better. To keep them perfectly aligned, I used a spare outlet part I had removed from elsewhere as a guide while I epoxied the covers in place. When shopping for frames, do be sure to look for ones that are not real heavy. This one already had a sturdy backing, so after carefully removing the stand, I just used what was there. I roughed up the back with coarse sandpaper and roughed up the surface of the plastic plug covers and epoxied everything together. While that epoxy was curing, I printed out a photo of black and white marble I had taken a while ago, slid it behind the cleaned up glass, and when the epoxy was cured, reassembled the frame. Back upstairs in the kitchen, it was time to try out the new framed outlet covers. The end result? Instead of glaring at boring outlet covers, I now have artwork on my wall that happens to serve a purpose.
I thrifted these picture frames and old sheets and made the cutest decor. First, I removed the backing off of each thrifted frame, and then I cut my thrifted sheet slightly bigger than the frame. If the sheet has wrinkles, make sure to iron it first. I applied Mod Podge with a paintbrush to the front of the frame and placed it back on the fabric. I used my rotary cutter to cut an X in the center and used scissors to make the X go right to the edge of each corner. I applied more Mod Podge onto the frame and pressed the folded fabric over the edge around the back. I added extra Mod Podge where needed to hold the fabric down. I did the same for each inside edge, and then for the outside edges, I folded the corner like wrapping a present and trimmed any excess fabric. I set this one aside and made 2 more. The frame for this next one wasn't as good as the thrifted IKEA one, so I ended up finding it easier to use hot glue to secure the fabric. It held better than the Mod Podge. Otherwise, I followed the same steps as the previous one. For the third frame, I did a combination of Mod Podge and hot glue. I liked that the hot glue hardened right away so you could really pull the fabric tight. I also removed the inside matting and covered that with the same fabric. I brushed the Mod Podge onto the surface of the matting, and then I cut the outside edges flush because they go right up against the frame. I folded the inside edges towards the back and secured it by using hot glue. I filled the picture frames with some really cute things I had at home, and I love how it turned out. What do you think? I hope this inspires you to get creative with thrifted picture frames and thrifted sheets. Customize your light switch covers with these 4 easy hacks. Grab some napkins, apply Mod Podge to the light cover switch, place the napkin on top, and gently wrap the napkin over the edges of the cover. Trim the excess and apply Mod Podge on the top of the napkin and poke the screw holes out. 2. Grab some washi tape and place on a light cover switch. Wrap around the edges and keep adding tape until it is completely covered. Poke the screw holes and you're done. 3. Grab some scrap wallpaper and trim a little bigger than the light switch cover. Use hot glue on the edges to wrap and secure the wallpaper over the light switch cover. Trim the corners to reduce the bulk, and then cut out the center hole and wrap it to the back. Poke the screw holes through. 4. Grab some adhesive shelf liner and cut it a little bigger than the light switch cover. Peel the backing off, apply to the light switch cover, and trim the corners before wrapping it around the back. I used a blow dryer to smooth it out and it helped it stick better. Cut the center hole and wrap it to the back. Now you have 4 unique ideas for creating custom light switch covers. I hope this inspired you to create your own light switch cover.
A trip to IKEA for the Sonehand frames, and I grabbed 2 in the 19-inch square size. Inside the frame itself is an inner shadow box structure meant to hold 3D items. Inside the frame itself is an inner shadow box structure meant to hold 3D items. Back at home, I took the frames apart to start on the brackets. Where to cut was easy to find by setting the shadow box frame inside the main frame and marking it with a pencil. Once trimmed to fit snugly and a little measuring for placement, I then attached them directly to the inside of the main frame using wood glue. Grabbed a couple of small clamps to hold everything together until the glue was set. Once the brackets were secure, I slid the 2 full frames together and glued them with wood glue. Just for peace of mind and extra sturdiness, I also added a few screws through the underside of the lower frame into the upper one. And that's all it took to create this great project, but let's dress it up a bit and customize it. Knowing the corner I was hanging this wall mount magazine rack in is typically dim, I added a battery-powered pendant light in the top section. All I needed to do here was drill a small hole in the top, feed the pull string through, and tie a knot so it stays put. Simple, but it gives off a nice subtle warm glow. To elevate the look, I used a peel and stick linen textured fabric on the bracket faces. It gives everything a soft, slightly textured finish, visually quiet, but purposefully designed. Just enough contrast to be interesting. Mounting to the wall was straightforward. I made custom dowel pegs by cutting some scrap square dowel down to size and adding hanger bolts into the ends. The frame itself just rests on top of those pegs. No visible brackets, no overcomplicated mounting hardware. Functionally, the shelves are perfect for slim items like magazines, books. It's decorative, but it's also useful and practical and fits near anywhere. Plus the look? Totally high-end modern gallery.